There. Hey everybody, this is the SportsTalkeyes show. This is our first show. With me, I'm Sam, and with me I have.
Hey, my name's Keegan.
I'm Tanner.
So what this show is going to be like, it's going to be like a first take show, just talking about sports from MLB to NFL to college sports to the NBA. So now with that short introduction, let's get right into it. So obviously the major topic of sports today is NBA free agency. For those of you who don't know, a restricted free agent can sign an offer sheet with any team, and a unrestricted free agent is free to sign with any team. A team option grants the original team the right to keep a player for another year, and a player option grants the player the power to decide whether to leave or stay. That being said, let's get right into it. Obviously, the biggest name in free agency right now is Kawhi Leonard. He is an unrestricted free agent, and nobody knows where he's going to sign. It's between three teams: the Clippers, the Lakers, the Raptors. Many reports have said, some say Lakers, and today Jalen Rose actually said he's going to Toronto with 99%, and some say, unfortunately, the Clippers are out. I'm interested to hear what y'all have to say about that. So where do y'all think Kawhi's going to end up?
Tanner, do you want to go first or should I?
Sure, I'll start us off. Usually, when you talk about these things, you have where do you think and where do you want. Those are usually two separate places, but I actually think they're the same, and I think it's Toronto. We saw what this team could do just this past year. Yeah, you could talk about how Golden State was injured and whatnot, but the bottom line is this is a team who won on their depth, right? They had one superstar, which in today's NBA, a lot of people talk about isn't enough. Well, they had one superstar and a bunch of guys who all bought in. People like Fred VanVleet playing big minutes, Serge Ibaka, like they went 9-10 deep. Their bench was good. Their starters were good. It was a team that was just fun to watch. They weren't as showy as other teams, but their depth was a lot of fun to watch. So I think he should, and I think he will stay in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So why hasn't he announced that yet, you think?
I just don't think it's Kawhi's style. He's never wanted to make the big splash. Like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, they announced, even before free agency started, because they're those type of guys. They like to have the big headlines. He wants all that out of the way, and I think at least he wants to just be able to go somewhere and play basketball. He doesn't want the headlines. He doesn't want anything else.
Another thing about why Kawhi has taken so much time is the fact that he's never been recruited like this ever in his career. Because in college, he went to San Diego State. He wasn't very heavily recruited by a lot of those big D1 schools. And then he goes to the Spurs. He ends up getting traded to Toronto, as we've seen. But he's never been that big guy. He's never been the recruit that everybody's throwing everything they got at him. And so he's now finally in the spotlight, just him. If Kevin Durant were healthy, it might be a different story. But Kawhi Leonard is the healthiest, best free agent out there. Still out there to this day. I'm hoping we're going to get something from Woj halfway through this so we can break it down. But I want to transition into what I was going to answer about whether I think that he's going to go to the Lakers, Clippers, or Raptors. And Tanner started off talking about how where you want a player to go can sometimes be different from where you think he's going to go. Obviously, I'm repping the Clippers hat. I want him to go to Los Angeles. Not only to LA, but I want him to be repping the Clippers colors. And the reason why the Clippers would be a good fit for Kawhi is you have the roster filled out with a bunch of dogs. They got Patrick Beverley back. They got young people like Montrezl Harrell, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who just came off of a surprisingly good rookie season. You have another rookie in Landry Shamet, who hit a three-pointer in clutch time over the Warriors, something that we haven't seen from Steph in big time, as we saw in the NBA Finals once again. But all of that being said, I also think he's going to re-sign in Toronto on a 2-year deal. I think that everything that Tanner talked about in terms of Toronto not only putting together the roster that he needs, doing and playing it out like they did, knocking off the Bucks with the MVP Giannis, knocking off the 76ers with a 4-bounce shot in Game 7. But best of all, for Kawhi, the Toronto Raptors have incorporated Kawhi's medical staff as the Raptors' medical staff. And when you have the history with injuries that Kawhi does, that's something that's really integral to your deciding process.
Absolutely.
And so whether it be tonight or tomorrow, I think he's going to re-sign with the Raptors.
I think it's interesting that none of y'all talked about him signing with the Lakers. Obviously,
Yeah, right.
They're trying to get another free agent to team up with LeBron. I personally think he's going to Raptors as well. I think he's been a superstar on the court, not off the court. That's why I think he's not going to LA. He's not into the big lights, shining cars. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
and just one other thing I'd like to add right now is the only other time he's been this talked about was after his other championship and MVP, and that was with obviously the Spurs, who have another team in their state. Like, he was a hero in a city. Right now he's a hero in a country. That entire country was rallied around this Raptors team, and they were able to get it done with obviously the help of Kawhi Leonard, and he is a hero to the entire nation.
Absolutely.
It's like right now we have, for the Raptors, we have Drake, who's a super fan. We've had numerous super fans in the past, but have you ever seen a super fan massage the shoulders of the head coach? I mean, Kawhi's he's turned that boat around so much from guys who choke as soon as you see LeBron to NBA champs. And it's got the entire country of Canada behind him. So
I don't know if y'all saw, but they actually have a news copter that was following SUVs. One of them supposedly had Kawhi in it. Drake's also doing his own recruiting campaign. So I'm very interested to see where he lands.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Obviously, if he does go to the Lakers, the big question is it weaker than Kevin Durant joined the Lakers? Or joined the Warriors, excuse me. What are y'all opinions on that?
You want to take this one, Keegan, to start?
I guess I'll go first on this one. I would say that it would not be weaker than the Kevin Durant move, but it would be a close second. Like, there's nothing in my mind of all free agency moves that we've seen, especially those within this, within the last 19 years in the 2000s, because of course there are free agency moves earlier in the 90s, 80s, etc., but not until the 2000s and 2010s have you seen free agents move the way that they have with such power. The reason I say that Kevin Durant was weaker is if you look at the team that he was surrounded by, 73-9, that Warriors team not only broke the wins record by the Bulls, was already a working, well-oiled machine. But you can argue that numerous things led them from being this close to being back-to-back champions. For instance, Draymond Green gets suspended off of a BS flagrant call that LeBron essentially drew.
Oh!
He essentially draws it. And then the Cavaliers end up getting the stimulus package from the NBA by suspending Draymond when the Warriors could have ended it the next game in the Oracle in Game 5. But Draymond suspended. Additionally, Curry was hobbled near the end of that season, near the end of that series. But granted, he generally doesn't show up anyways. So you can argue about you can argue about how much that would dictate the outcome of the series. And something that hardly anyone talks about is Andrew Bogut going down in that series, who essentially with his absence opens up a super highway for LeBron to just drive to the basket. All of that being said, the Warriors were already a team that was this close to winning an NBA Finals again, and KD joins them.
Not to mention, KD was up 3-1 in the Western.
Absolutely, on the same team. And then the thing about the Lakers is Anthony Davis and LeBron have never played with each other, and Kawhi has never played with either of them anyway. In addition to that, and lastly, about the Lakers, You have Kuzma, but with Kawhi, who else are you going to afford to be able to surround those guys with? I just don't think the team will be
Exactly.
deep enough to be compared to the Warriors team that we've seen in the past if they consistently stayed healthy. But because of all those reasons, I think that Kevin Durant's move was weaker than Kawhi's if he would go to the Lakers.
Absolutely.
Right. There's no doubt in my mind that the Kevin Durant move was in fact weaker. But when you look at the possibility of this move, I'm still on just because whether it's weak or not. Because on one part I'm like absolutely it's weak, right? You got a superstar joining two other superstars at a point in the NBA where the second best player in the world is hurt, and the balance of power seems to be kind of restored now that KD's off the Warriors, and he's not even playing for a year. So that part of me is saying absolutely it's weak. The other part of me is looking at Kawhi Leonard and saying, I mean, what else does this guy have to prove? He's got two MVPs, one where he was the young gun on an older experienced Spurs team where he showed I can be the defensive stopper, I can guard the other team's best player. And then this other one where he looked and said, I can be the superstar of a championship team. I just did it. So what else does this guy got to prove? But the question was, is it weaker than KD's? My answer is no. But I think I would still qualify it as a weak move. Yes.
I agree. I compare this to the potential of Kawhi going to the Lakers as the move LeBron made to go to the Heat.
Mhm.
They are a sub 500 team. They weren't a championship caliber team when LeBron and Chris Bosh joined the Heat. Yes, it is a weak move because he's joined two of the best players in the NBA. But is it weaker than KD? No, absolutely not. I don't think there will ever be a weaker move than Kevin Durant made. All right. So, switching gears, Tanner, I'm sorry. I have to bring this up. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to the Nets. Both were unrestricted free agents. KD signed for a 4-year, 164 mil, and Kyrie 4-year, 141 mil. So my question to y'all is, what's y'all's opinions on that, and why do you think the Nets were picked over the Knicks?
Tanner, I think you deserve the right to go first on this one.
All right, I'll be able to keep my emotions in check if we're talking about the Nets, but if we do look at the other side, I will start to get into it. Anyway, so I think the question of why the Nets over the Knicks, I think in the case of Kyrie Irving, I think it just makes more sense.
He grew up around the area.
He grew up in New Jersey, which, mind you, they were in New Jersey at that point, obviously. The Nets showed what they can do with a superstar point guard, what they did last year with D'Angelo Russell. Now you've got an even better point guard to play with these guys. And Karis LeVert isn't missing half the season. You still have some of these young pieces continuing to develop. You had Jared Allen, a good center who can play a nice pick and roll with Kyrie Irving. Like, it just seems to make more sense. And when you look at the Knicks, they traded Kristaps Porzingis for Dennis Smith. I'm not comparing Dennis Smith to Kyrie Irving at all, but in their plans is to try and develop Dennis Smith, where signing a Kyrie Irving just doesn't make as much sense as it would if you were the Nets. Now for KD, I think it was I could either go to the Knicks, sit out a year and not play with anyone, or I can play with Kyrie Irving, and that's what I think it was. I think that's why the story broke for Kyrie first, because he knew he wanted to play there. And once he decided to play there, Kevin Durant was like, I want to play with another superstar. We could be nasty. I'm leaning towards playing with Kyrie.
Absolutely. Keegan?
I agree with everything said there. Just because I don't want to rehash everything Tanner said, I'm going to take the question a little bit of a different way. Because there's been, ever since Kevin Durant and Kyrie both on Sunday night officially signed their contracts to, be part of the Brooklyn Nets franchise. There's been a lot of, news buzzing around about how if it hadn't been for the KD injury, that both of them would be in New York, or at the very least, not in New York, but for the Knicks. And if not both of them, then KD especially. For some of the reasons that Tanner stated, as well as some more that I'm about to say, I really don't think that was the case. Because if you look at the very beginning of the season, as well as just throughout the course of time, there was really always five different teams that were connected as leaders and favorites to sign Kevin Durant. And that would be the Warriors, the two LA teams between the Lakers and Clippers, and then the two New York teams between the Knicks and the Nets. All five of them consistently were named throughout the year as being favorites. And at the beginning of the season, the Knicks and the Nets, neither of them had seen, great dominance recently. Neither of them really had, much more of a trajectory above the other. Then the season continues. The Knicks, we knew that they're going to tank and try and get Zion Williamson, or at least a high draft pick, in which they did get a high draft pick. But RJ Barrett's going to be a solid player, Tanner. It's all right. No, only one team can get Zion. It just happened to be the Pelicans. But the Nets would go on to make the playoffs. And led by D'Angelo Russell, who, he was an all-star. He was a player who was in the conversation of most improved. But the thing is, that rhetoric around D'Angelo Russell being an all-star breakout player, it's true, but he was an all-star by default because Victor Oladipo gets injured. Mm-hmm. And if not for him, then D'Angelo Russell doesn't become an all-star. So theoretically, without injuries, there are no all-stars on the Nets. Yet at the same time, they make the playoffs as the 6th seed. And you replace D'Angelo Russell with Kyrie Irving. And then you throw in Kevin Durant in there. And it just makes a whole lot more sense after knowing where the next pick would land. Saying that the KD injury didn't hurt the Knicks' chances would be incorrect. I think that the pick falling to 3 instead of being 1 might have hurt more than the KD injury. Because, if KD comes back after being injured the 1 year with the Knicks, you have a guy like Zion that he could pair up with. Maybe Ja Morant. RJ Barrett, he's a half step down below those guys. Still a solid piece. But why not play with Kyrie as well as a roster that can and will make the playoffs?
Absolutely. I agree with both of y'all. I think he went to Nets just based on the fact both of them went to the Nets because no one can argue they were the best team out of the two. That being said, it did shock me. Brooklyn's not the best place. I do think the draft pick, like you said, Keegan, did affect their decision and just that whole situation unfortunately happening to the Knicks. But do y'all think KD is worth that much off of a torn Achilles in which he will miss the entire next year? Reminder, he signed for 4 years for $164 million.
Would you want me to take this one?
Yeah, go for it.
My answer would be it depends. Because for a team like the Nets, because mind you, they locked down Kyrie before they locked down KD. So they have a superstar point guard, a young core, and they are one player away from really being a championship contender. 100%, he's worth that. If he's that missing piece, 100%. For a team like the Knicks, who are multiple players and multiple years away, absolutely not.
I agree.
That's my. It really depends on where the team is, but for where he signed, I think he's worth every cent.
Mm-hmm. The funny thing is that when we were talking about who was going to go first there, I already had my answer in my mind, and it started with 2 words. It depends. And it's hilarious because I'm just in terms of not trying to say the same thing again because I agree. I totally agree. It depends on where the team is. For the Nets, it's a perfect move. The thing is that a lot of times with an Achilles injury, you see the player come back to be somewhere. If they do come back to near full strength, it's somewhere in that 60 to 85% range of where they used to be. Like if you look at a Kobe Bryant, if you look at DeMarcus Cousins, both of them came back and played valuable minutes in the NBA, but were close, but just weren't where they used to be. If you take 60 to 85% of Kevin Durant, at the very top, at 85% of what we know Kevin Durant to be, that's still an all-star.
Oh, absolutely.
If you take 60% of Kevin Durant, I say that's still a starter caliber player at the very least. So I think no matter what, whether he does return to be the superstar that we knew him to be or not, whether he's worth that much money, if you believe he's going to come back and be a superstar, then yeah, he's worth the money. If he's going to end up being an all-star or a starter caliber player, okay, you overpaid, but doesn't everybody overpay for starters in free agency? So
Absolutely.
you might as well go after someone with a high end.
Absolutely. I agree with both of y'all. I think it's Kevin Durant. Everyone, if not the second best, third best player in the league, in my opinion. You gotta go all out for that player no matter what. And I wasn't surprised that it was that big of a contract, but it'll be interesting to see how he comes back. Like you said, you mentioned DeMarcus Cousins, Kobe Bryant, also Chauncey Billups, Rudy Gay.
Yeah.
They never came back to where they were. So it'll be interesting to see can KD return to the player he once was. And now, what without KD and with KD, what are your expectations for his team? So this year with just Kyrie, do you expect them to be like they were last year with D'Angelo Russell? And then I want your opinion on next year when KD comes back.
You want to take this one, Keegan?
Yeah, I can start out with this one. That's a good question. I think that with Kyrie, because last year we saw them get the 6th seed, like I had previously mentioned. I think they're going to be a team similar to the Pacers. You have Victor Oladipo coming back off of injury, and they lost Bogdanovich, but they added Malcolm Brogdon, I believe.
They did.
And they're going to be a team similar to that in the manner in which they're going to be a half step, if not a full step below, the 76ers, the Raptors if they re-sign Kawhi, the Celtics now that they replaced Kyrie with Kemba. Those are some of the serious contenders. The Celtics a little less since they lost Kyrie, added Kemba, and also lost Al Horford. And Terry Rozier. I think the Nets could make a run towards the semifinals within their conference, but if you get any further than that, it'd be a surprise to me. As for when they return Kevin Durant, it's really going to be title or bust. They're immediately going to become championship contenders, and I'm really going to love to see the East moving forward, where we got the 76ers built as the defensive powerhouse that they have, adding Al Horford there alongside Joel Embiid. And it's going to be great seeing them battle against Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. It's going to be great seeing those 3 powerhouses. Maybe 4 if you throw in the Raptors. Maybe 5 if you throw in the Pacers. It's going to be really interesting to see. The East is deeper than it used to be.
Absolutely.
And it might be easy to say, but I think this upcoming year, I think they're going to be incredibly similar to the team last year. They have, again, a superstar point guard and a bunch of young pieces that can play and will do their best to play around Kyrie Irving and whatever he needs. If he needs shooting, he'll still stay on the perimeter and chuck up shots. If they need defense, they'll get down on the defensive end and defend. But once KD comes back, because one of the things we like to talk about with this team, or we mentioned a couple times, the main draw for someone like Kyrie was that young core that really helped get them to the playoffs last year. When you kind of look at it, the one position where it's, you might be able to sacrifice some room is small forward. And they're putting in the second best player in the world and would be the best small forward, of course, if the number one player wasn't a small forward. But the most talented offensive small forward, no doubt about it. The makeup from top to bottom. Like once KD comes back, their starting lineup will be Kyrie, Karis LeVert, Kevin Durant, who will be their power forward? It was Jared Dudley. I'm not sure who they're replacing him with, and then Jared Allen at center, a rim protector, a rebounder. Like that is a makeup of a very good squad. And like Keegan said, they're going to make noise in that East for a long time.
Absolutely. As for my expectations, if y'all don't remember, Kyrie stated he wanted the Celtics to be his team. Unfortunately, it never felt like it was his team. He was the best player. No one can argue that, but it wasn't his team based on Brad Stevens. He's more team focused, not individual. That being said, this upcoming year, it's going to be his team. There's no one near his talent. Yes, Karis LeVert's a great player, but you can't compare him and Kyrie. Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting about the season after when KD returns, I think it all depends on his recovery. If he makes it back to where he was, I can see them going to conference finals. Yet, as we're seeing with all these free agent signings, the East is getting better. It's becoming more level playing field through the West and the East. So, but I still think, it's Kyrie and KD, 2 top 5 players, maybe top 10, depends who you ask. So I'm excited to see this whole net situation. But yeah, it'll be very interesting. Now we should talk about the unfortunate New York Knicks. Sorry, Tanner. As you both know, they missed out on their prime free agent candidate, Kevin Durant. And they also missed out on Zion Williamson with having one of the worst records in the NBA last year. Now, excuse me. With KD coming off an injury as serious as an Achilles tendon rupture, is it a smart move that they did not sign KD because they were expected, according to multiple reports, they were all in on Kevin Durant. But once the injury happened, they're like, that's too big of a risk because, as we've talked about, you just aren't the same player a majority of the time coming off a torn Achilles. I just want to get your opinion on that. I think Tanner should start with this one, being the Knicks fan.
Agreed.
To keep it short, I think they were incredibly smart to stay away. I sort of mentioned it before about how the Nets were one player away, so they should absolutely go for it. The Knicks are not. Even with this current Knicks team, with Kevin Durant, where do you realistically see them? A 7 seed, a 6 seed at best? Yeah. The team is quite far away. So the max you can sign into is 4 years. So this next year he sits out, recovering with the injury. So that's 1 year off the contract. Then in 2020, the free agent class is so bad that you can't really pair him up with anyone else. So you play another year really without anyone to help him. So that's 2 years gone. I'm gonna forget that. But that's half the contract gone. That's half of the max contract gone already when you really haven't gotten much value because you weren't able to pair him up with anyone. Now you're down to 2 more years. Then you try your luck in 2021 with an already max contract. Then you have to start having to pay your younger guys as they, start getting out of their rookie contracts, and you get into a big mess with everything. With the way the team is now, they just need more time, more flexibility, which I think was a great move to stay away. And everyone's clowning on them for being the same old Knicks, not being able to land a big free agent. When I think they should be praising this front office for not being the same old Knicks, because the same old Knicks would have thrown a max contract at someone to make up for the failed offseason, and it would have really ended up hurting them down the line. So I'm very happy. Well, I'm not happy because I would have liked to have a healthy Kevin Durant. But with the way the cards fell, I'm very happy with the way the Knicks front office handled it.
Yeah. If this were in 2K or something like that, you throw all the money at KD you want, you try and get as many free agents you like, and then you go into the draft and then you trade up to get the one pick, and you finesse the system. But in real life, sometimes you gotta do the long route. And for the Knicks, the long route will be the better route for all of the reasons that Tanner just listed. While it would be really nice for guys like Stephen A. Smith or some other Knicks fans in media right now who are going off, like Michael Rappaport, he had a really funny rant on Twitter. He immediately went live afterwards. But for everybody like that, it's so easy to get disappointed, caught up in the mix, and just be frustrated at a front office that didn't even offer him the max. But like Tanner was saying, you got to play the long route, because when you got a young guy like RJ Barrett, when you got Kevin Knox, when you got all of these young guys who need to develop, Mitchell Robinson, for instance, at center, you got to give these guys time to get better. And if you get Kevin Durant, if you get a big free agent who wants to win now, there's no time to develop. You got to go from rookie to all-star just like that. And that doesn't happen realistically unless you're Ben Simmons in your second rookie season. Then you might jump right to the all-star kind of area. But so I agree with Tanner.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I'm a New York Knicks fan, I'm furious at the Warriors training staff because I personally believe they rushed him back. He wasn't ready, but NBA Finals, you got your best player needs to be there. Everyone kept nagging him, so they forced him back. Achilles tendon torn. I think if that sequence doesn't happen, we are seeing Kevin Durant in a New York Knicks uniform. Unfortunately, that's not how it worked out. So, yes, I agree. It was a smart move, unfortunate move, but you got to do it. What I don't understand is why the Knicks aren't in the talk for Kawhi Leonard. That's because obviously he's not as good as Kevin Durant, but why are the Knicks not going to the second option? Were they just like, oh, we didn't get Kevin Durant? Better luck in the future. I just want to see where y'all are on that statement.
You want to take this? Or
Yeah, I think that the reason why they're not in the Kawhi sweepstakes is really for a similar reason why I think they were never going to get Kevin Durant in the first place, and that's just the fact that they weren't ready. You had a front office at the time who just was consistently not making smart moves. You can have the argument, whether or not this was a smart move by not throwing Kevin Durant the max. We agree that it is a good move because the Knicks just aren't ready for a free agent like that. And for the same reason, I don't think they're ready for Kawhi Leonard. I think that the argument can be made that Kawhi is on the same level as KD. I don't think that a healthy KD is a worse player than Kawhi. But I think that with the elite defense that Kawhi brings to the table, as well as the improved offense that he's having, that you saw throughout the playoffs, I think he's starting to get to that caliber that KD is on, or that we hope that he returns to. But for the reasons outlined, the Knicks just aren't ready for a free agent like that just yet.
Yeah, I think not only are they not ready, but I think in their discussions when they made the decision to not offer KD the max, they were effectively committing to the long haul rebuild, to which signing someone like Kawhi Leonard really wouldn't be following that model. Um, yeah, I mean, I just think for those reasons, really, it's too early, and they're really decided to commit to this long rebuild.
Absolutely. And I think another point that should be brought up is Kawhi doesn't want to be that guy. If you understand what I'm saying, he's never been the guy to be the one dude. He's had Tony Parker, Manu, Tim Duncan. This year, he was the guy, but he had Kyle Lowry, Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol around him. He's never been the only really good player on a team, and I think that shied him away, and that's why I don't think the Knicks offered him a contract. That being said, obviously, that the rebuild is in process for the New York Knicks, drafting R.J. Barrett at third. What are y'all's expectations for the future Knicks with RJ and this young core that needs to be developed?
I personally expect growing pains in a lot of them. I expect to see raw, talented guys learn for the next couple of years. And it might not be pretty on the court, but in terms of player development, you got to let these guys play. You got to let them flourish. You got to let them see NBA competition, see how really different the game is. For someone like RJ Barrett, he's 19 years old. He went from high school to college to NBA in 3 years. It's massive jumps, and he really needs to get used to how the game plays. You saw it with Kevin Knox. You see it with everybody. I expect growing pains, and in 2021, when another sort of ripe free agent class hits the market, I expect a team that is definitely more ready and more willing to pursue the top free agents. Whether they land them, I don't know. But I'm expecting to see a rough, kind of raw sort of basketball for the next couple of years, followed by an aggressive push towards free agents.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it really depends on where things go in terms of the draft picks they're going to be able to accumulate moving forward. As we saw this year, outside of the Knicks, none of the three teams that were tied for the best odds for the number one pick. Outside of the Knicks, none of them made the top three. So essentially, with the new system that the NBA has established for the NBA draft, tanking isn't something that really should work anymore. In terms of the NBA product night after night, I'm really glad that they went about doing something like that, because you're no longer having teams throwing a season away before game one even starts.
Absolutely.
So with all of that being said, if the Knicks are able to get those ping pong balls bouncing the way that they would have hoped it to go this year, they compete hard, their players develop, it'll take time, there'll be growing pains. There'll be a lot of Knicks fans angry whenever things go wrong, and then they'll probably over-rejoice when things go right for a few times. But that's just the way the basketball fans are.
Absolutely.
It's like they're gonna overreact to everything, and it's not just the Knicks. It's every single NBA team, unless you're someone like the Clippers and you've never made it to the conference finals. So you have nothing to really react to anyways. I don't know anyone who would be dumb enough to be Clippers fan. But
Me
yeah,
neither.
but about the Knicks, staying on topic, it's going to take time. I hope they get good draft picks, and I hope they get relevant again and potentially become the number one team in New York again, because they're not right now.
Oh,
I don't think you can argue with that statement, Tanner, unfortunately.
what did the headlines say? The headlines didn't say Nets land free agents. They said Knicks lose free agents.
Well, I mean, we are talking
That's all I
about
gotta say.
Manhattan versus Brooklyn, but
I
yeah.
agree with y'all. I think they are gonna have a couple rough years in the future. That being said, they did sign some good assets to the team. Bobby Portis, he's a young buck. He's improving his game yearly. We saw what he did at Wizards. Taj Gibson, I guess that's just a development to help the young bucks. Julius Randle, I think that'll help tremendously, especially with Mitchell Robinson. I think that could be a deadly inner duo. And then Wayne Ellington from the Heat. That being said, I do think it's going to be a rough couple of years for the Knicks franchise. But obviously, with bad teams, you're likely to get a good draft pick. We have a lot of young talent coming up. Cole Anthony, LaMelo Ball, James Wiseman, a bunch of good players. RJ Hampton coming from Australia. So it'll be interesting. It's obviously going to be a rough couple years. One thing I think that would really benefit RJ Barrett is Carmelo Anthony. He's worshipped with the Knicks franchise. But that being said, he's not the player. I think he would develop RJ very well. He knows the NBA game. He knows what's to be done. What are your opinions about Carmelo returning to the Knicks and helping develop this young talent?
Keegan, you want to take this one?
I've never even I'm going to be straightforward with you. I haven't thought about Carmelo Anthony in a long time.
I haven't
Yeah,
either. I just saw it. I was looking through the free agent tracker today, and he's a free agent still. So,
yeah. Well,
just
granted, he's a free agent throughout the season, so anybody could have him at this point, but no one's picked him up. But I do think it would be kind of cool to have Carmelo back on the Knicks. The thing is that I just don't know how good of a I don't know how good of a mental position he can play, because he shoved Jeremy Lin out of New York, and that was the best thing to happen to the team since the Knicks made the playoffs at the beginning of Carmelo's reign. But he just slowly just went back into this. I don't know, man. He could potentially play the role if he humbles himself and knows that he's not good anymore.
He doesn't know that his talent's gone. Not gone. It's just not what it was. Tanner, what's your opinion?
And I think, well, I'd like to say this by saying no disrespect to Carmelo Anthony. I grew up watching him play. I watched him be just pretty much play some really good years in the mecca of NBA basketball, and it was awesome. I love Carmelo Anthony. Love what he brought to the Knicks organization. With that being said, I think it would be quite a bad idea, and I think the main reason is something, actually, a word Keegan said, and it was being humble. He's not humble enough to teach him the ropes. Accepting that he is no longer, that his role now is to be a mentor instead of a star player, and with that, accepting the pay decrease that a mentor gets instead of a superstar. And in order for them to work out a contract to where it makes sense for the Knicks, to where they're not paying that much money and still getting this mentor, I don't think they could be able to come to terms on it. And I just don't think it would work out really for anyone.
I mean, I didn't think it will ever happen just based on knowing Carmelo. Just wanted to see y'all's opinion. Another big free agent signing, Kemba Walker. he signed with the Boston Celtics 4 years, 141 mil. Is it a good or bad move by Celtics? And did they know Kyrie wasn't coming back, and that's why they went after Kemba?
Tanner, you can take this one to start with.
Did they know Kyrie wasn't coming back? Yeah, I'm fairly certain they did. And I'm pretty sure all of them wanted him to go.
Yeah, Boston didn't really like Kyrie.
That was that tenure didn't really turn out that well. But I'm sorry, what was the other question?
Was it a good or bad move by the Celtics?
I mean, is it a good move? It's hard to say adding Kemba Walker is a bad move.
Yeah.
He's one of the better point guards, obviously, in the NBA.
Underrated.
Very underrated. He's been tucked away in Charlotte for so long. He finally gets his chance. Is he as good as Kyrie Irving? Obviously, no. But he's never really played with other talented individuals, or not as talented as he has on this team. People like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So I think it's too early to say it's a bad move. But I also think it's too early to say it's a good move. So I'm leaning towards a good move because right now it's just really hard to say adding Kemba Walker. Especially if you've known for a while your superstar point guard is leaving.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to start off with the question that Tanner answered first, did the Celtics, did the fans and the organization know that he was leaving? Hell yeah. Of course they knew he was leaving. As soon as he said, I'm going to re-sign with you guys next year, he was out of there. As soon as that moment happened, things went downhill immediately. He starts arguing with Brad Stevens. Him and Gordon Hayward just don't seem to be meshing well together since they're both trying to reintegrate themselves into an offense that isn't really going to have one player more ball dominant than another. And being on that idea of the Brad Stevens offense being very much led by a team, not a single player, not only do I think it's a good move for the Celtics, I honestly love the move. In terms of championship contention, I think the Celtics took a little bit of a step back on paper. But when you look at the morale of the team, one of the best guys you're ever going to meet in the NBA is Kemba Walker. He's consistently, by anyone who's ever been in Charlotte, who's ever been part of him on any team, I've heard nothing but good things in terms of how great of a teammate he is, but how selfless he is. He said in an interview with Scott Van Pelt, I believe it was, that he gave everything that he had to the Charlotte organization and said it was just time for him to actually try to pursue a championship. He didn't think it was realistic there. But he gave 8 years to that organization. And that being said, you have Kemba Walker, who I think is pretty similar to Kyrie as a player. I think that Kemba's a half step below Kyrie, but only for the reason that he hasn't been able to prove himself in the playoffs. He's just never been a good enough player. Kyrie's been paired up with LeBron. Kyrie has been on this Celtics team. He's been in the playoffs. He's had a lot of big moments, but he's also had a lot more opportunities than Kemba. Yeah. We just haven't seen this guy in the clutch. And you know what was the one time we've seen Kemba in the clutch? What happened in college? Cardiac Kemba. He's got the nickname from it. He hit a big shot, and he got the nickname back in college. I think when you're pairing him with the offense that Brad Stevens has in Boston, with a developing talent with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, I really do think that this is going to work out if Gordon Hayward makes sure that he also isn't going to try to be ball dominant, but go with this Brad Stevens system.
Absolutely.
Right. You
want to add on to that?
I was just going to say really quickly that just kind of to sum up everything, Kyrie Irving and Kemba Walker are both superstar point guard talents, but one is much more willing to accept an offense where no one is going to be ball dominant, and that's going to be Kemba Walker. He's never, he's never had really have a good winning team, and he'll do anything to win. You've seen it in college, like you said. He just wants to win.
I think both of y'all brought some great points. Obviously, I think it's a good move. I think Kemba is one of the best point guards, but it's obviously underrated due to the lack of talent on his teams because people focus on playoff wins. Well, his team sucked. No one can argue that. Who do you have? Jeremy Lamb, Frank Kaminsky.
Right. Nick
Terrible.
Batum or whatever. Yeah.
Nicholas Batum. Like, that's not a playoff team. You're not going to win with that team. That being said, I think, as I said, it's a great move by the Celtics. You get an unselfish player. I'm really interested to see how he works with Brad Stevens' offense game plan. Like y'all said, it's not a one dude ISO ball like what Kyrie wants. That's why I think he didn't do very well. He's a very selfish player. So it'll be interesting to see what Kemba does. I'm super pumped for him because this is the first time he's going to be on a big stage. It'll be very interesting. That being said, they did get the Hornets did get Terry Rozier. I personally think that's a good pickup for losing Kemba, not on the same level. Can I get your opinions on that?
You want to take this one?
Yeah, I think that really what Charlotte's going to be doing is going into a full rebuild now. And, with the system that with like the drafting system that the NBA's put in place now, I think that a lot of GMs, coaches, etc., organizations know that tanking is not going to work anymore. So what you should do is try to build a competitive team, but will ultimately lead you to a decent chance to get a good lottery pick. And getting Terry Rozier, I think that what's going to happen is that they're going to be competitive because he's a solid point guard. He's never been able to be the starting point guard, except for a short amount of time.
When Kyrie went down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think that the Hornets, they're just kind of gonna patter around the NBA and end up getting a lottery slot and go into a full rebuild because Terry Rozier is not a guy that you're gonna build a championship team off of. No offense to him or anyone else on that roster, but all they can do is rebuild. That's what they're gonna have to do.
Yeah, see, I'm hating this because we keep agreeing, but I think it's a good move for a team to stay competitive. Literally, as you said, he's not going to be the starting point guard of a championship team. He'll be a starting point guard of a competitive team. As you saw, that month or so in Kyrie's absence, in a role he really flourished in. To be fair, I mean he really played really good basketball, but in a team that's probably entering a full rebuild in the near future, it's a very low risk, high reward situation, which I think is really good to have for a team in their spot. He could, really grab the reins and really turn into a starting point guard of, a good, decent starting point guard, which would really help and accelerate this rebuild. Or if it turns out he really needs the supporting cast, you're already hitting the reset button. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I like what you said. High reward, low risk. I agree with that. I don't know if y'all saw, but the Celtics are planning on signing Enes Kanter to replace Al Horford. Do you think he will work well in that system, or is Al Horford going to be a bigger loss than the Celtics expected?
I'm going to say yes to both, honestly, because I think Enes Kanter will be very good on the offensive end in that system. He's a really good offensive rebounder. He's a really good interior post player offensively. Wherever he's gone, he's scored. He's scored in the paint. He's been able to have it be a nice offensive inside presence. So yes, he will work well, but on the defensive end, they're going to miss Al Horford so much. Al Horford is such a solid defender While Enes Kanter isn't. He's never been a good defender. He's, not the unfortunate matter. He's not tall enough or athletic enough to be a rim protector. He's not quick enough to guard any other position. He's really gives you nothing on the defensive end. So in their system, I think he'll do great. Defensively, they will really miss Al Horford.
I agree.
Yeah. In terms of filling Al Horford, finding a guy like Enes Kanter who, not going to be taking up a lot of your salary. He's just not. He's not really that high of a caliber player, but despite that, he's going to give you a lot of solid minutes. And when you're losing a guy like Al Horford, who is tremendous on the defensive end and can also hit shots from three, and is also a fairly good rebounder, you have a guy who you're going to miss. The Celtics will miss Al Horford, but taking Enes Kanter and playing him right there, you're also going to have a guy who's going to grab a whole lot of boards, so you can get the more offensively talented players like Kemba, like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward. They're going to get a lot of offensive boards. They're going to get a lot of second chances. So he's going to be a good fit for the Celtics. And, Tanner, I hate to agree with you on both ends, but we seem to just keep agreeing across the board. It's a little frustrating at this point.
And switching gears now to one of the most shocking, in my opinion, free agent signing, D'Angelo Russell. He signed with the Warriors for 4 years, $117 million. But the Warriors have announced they plan on trading him. And as you may not know, D'Angelo Russell was a part of a sign-in trade in which the Warriors did lose a valuable piece to their team, Andre Iguodala. I just want y'all's opinion on this sign-in trade and give me a reason as why you think the Warriors did this.
Man, when did it come out that he was going to be traded?
It was announced yesterday.
I did see the report too. Yeah, that they do plan on trading him.
Yeah, when did that report come out?
I think it was shortly after the trade. It was all got lost in the
was it really? Wow, that got cut fast then.
Do you want to take this one or?
Yeah, so I'm processing the trade at the same time. With the trade to get D'Angelo Russell, I think that's a really great move by the Warriors, because if you don't do some kind of sign and trade, then you're losing a guy like Kevin Durant for nothing. And you're going to get back a young guy like D'Angelo Russell who has a lot of trade value, who's going to be able to continue to improve in this league and be a really, really solid star point guard, if not being able to continue to be to one of the high caliber point guards in this league. The thing was that I didn't quite understand, in which this makes sense. I must have missed that report, because I was really confused as to how they're planning on having Steph Curry, D'Angelo Russell, and Klay Thompson all on that one roster when Klay does come back.
Yeah.
But this being said, it does make sense that they're going to be trading D'Angelo Russell to try and find some other big piece. I don't
for KD, I believe, is what they're after, I assume.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I think it's going to be really interesting to see who they end up getting back in return for D'Angelo Russell. But it really just shows how smart the Golden State franchise is. Because from a perspective of the front office, signing KD, trying to get guys like Andre Iguodala at the very beginning of what we understand as the Golden State dynasty. A lot of the moves that they've gotten, adding guys like Draymond Green in the second round. Klay Thompson, I also believe, was either a late first round or second round pick. But the moves that the Warriors have been making, it just shows how smart they are.
My answer isn't as clear cut. I get it and I don't get it all at the same time. And here's why. It's no secret that Steph Curry plays better with a star guard with him. You can't argue that. What he's been able to do with Klay Thompson. And with Klay Thompson being out kind of pretty much guaranteed until the All-Star break, possibly even more, they brought in another star guard to play along Steph Curry. And then, because I think the soonest he's available to be traded is mid-December. So by the time they work that out, find someone and work that trade, Klay will be coming back and I'll be back to normal. That part I get. But of any player to do it, D'Angelo Russell seems kind of perplexing. I don't doubt, I'm not disagreeing with anything you said before. He young guy, has the talent to be an incredible point guard in the NBA. But Steph Curry is also a point guard. And they both like having the ball in their hands. They both like shooting. Klay is much more willing for a catch and shoot than D'Angelo Russell. They both like to create their own shots. And it just seems it just seems like they're very similar. One of them obviously being better at what they like to do, that being Steph Curry. And in return, you give up Andre Iguodala, who I know is getting older, but he's been an excellent piece coming off the bench and has really been good on the defensive end. Well, because someone like Steph really struggles on the defensive end, and you're taking on a lot of salary. That part doesn't really make that much sense to me. I get the fact that you're getting a star guard, to flip by the time Klay Thompson comes back, but all of the really fine nuances really don't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to agree with you on this one, Tanner. I personally think it's a terrible move by the Warriors. Now let me explain why. Can you honestly tell me that D'Angelo Russell and Steph Curry are going to gel well together on the court? They play very similar, need the ball in their hands to make an impact. And not to mention, it's a high risk because, yes, D'Angelo Russell is a great player. But the fact that you signed him thinking he's going to be traded is just something I can't get behind personally. I think it's a high risk. And if they keep him, I just don't see it panning out very well. That being said, losing Iggy, I think is a bigger loss than the Warriors front office expects it to be. He's one of the best defenders. He's a valuable asset to that team. I mean, according to reports, he shut down LeBron in the finals, but LeBron averaged 38 points. But he helped them win that game. You can't argue that, other than getting swiped. But I think that's going to hurt the Warriors. And the D'Angelo Russell pickup doesn't make sense to me just based on the other key players they have.
Hang on. Before we move on, I disagree on both fronts, and here's why. On the Iguodala thing, the Golden State Warriors are the new New England Patriots in the NBA, and here's why. The Iguodala, getting rid of him, that's the kind of philosophy when you want to get rid of a guy when he's a year too early than a year too late, because it's a fact to everybody who watches basketball. The Iguodala is not who he used to be. And, that's no fault to Iguodala. That's fault to Father Time. All basketball players at some point, if not from injury, if just by getting old, they will get worse over time. And Iguodala, we've seen that. He's not as fast as he used to be. He's more injury prone now. And getting rid of him 1 year too early than too late is making sure that you don't have a guy who's going to be you're not going to have a guy who's going to have a costly injury down the line. It's trying to get rid of those risks before they happen kind of deal. And with the whole D'Angelo Russell thing, the way that I understood the sign and trade was this. Because Kevin Durant was an unrestricted free agent. And it was announced that he was going to be signing with the Nets. And then the Golden State organization was like, hang on, Nets, you need to get rid of this guy named D'Angelo Russell, right? In order to have the space on your salary, in order to have both Kyrie and KD. So let me take D'Angelo Russell off your hands and let me give you Kevin Durant. And by doing that sign and trade, not only is the cap space working for the Nets in terms of being able to bring on Kevin Durant in addition to Kyrie on that huge salary, but you're also getting rid of a guy who you really need to get rid of anyways. Because you can say the same thing about D'Angelo Russell with Kyrie as you can with Steph Curry and D'Angelo Russell. Both guys are extremely ball dominant. D'Angelo Russell wasn't going to work in the Nets as much as he's not going to work in the Warrior system. So because of that, it works for the Nets, opening up that cap space and get rid of a guy who was a restricted free agent, which means that they had dibs on if anyone offered him, then that means they'd be able to they'd be able to match the offer. It was something that you said at the very beginning, explaining how the salaries work and which kind of free agent what means what. I think it's a really smart move, not only by the Nets, but also by the Warriors, because you have a guy like D'Angelo Russell who is going to be traded to a team who's going to be looking to make that final push for the playoffs. I think it's going to work out.
Yeah, I think on the Nets front, it was great. You got rid of your salary. You got the guys you needed. That's all good. Although it seems like I'm a much more middle ground than you two. It seems like you guys on the ends, and I'm kind of leaning both ways here. But I get all that, and what you said makes complete sense. But what happens if a guy who really has had 1 year of stardom, he's really flourished this past year. He's had more years of not stardom than stardom. He's thrown into a completely new role, completely new players, still young and rather, I don't want to say inexperienced because he's been in the league for a couple of years now, but doesn't have the same mindset that a veteran would. He's still a young player. It just seems like there's a chance that with everything that's happened, he isn't as comfortable. And if he's not as comfortable and he doesn't flourish as much as he did in Brooklyn, or, of course, you got to talk about what, happens to everyone. What if he gets injured? What if he has some sort of injury and his trade value plummets?
Yeah.
Now you have this large cap hit on your roster that you really can't trade and you don't really know what to do with.
Yeah.
So it's definitely risky. So again, I'm kind of in the middle. You need to get something back for Kevin Durant, but he doesn't really fit well with Steph Curry. But this and that, it seems definitely an interesting move to say the least.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, like you said, injuries that could play a huge role in this. I mean, obviously, D'Angelo Russell has trade value. I think they will get rid of him, but say he gets injured, trade value plummets, like Tanner said. Where does he fit? I mean, imagine you're a young guy, you're on the Nets, you are the guy, and now you're taking not a backseat, but like the furthest row from the driver because you have Clay coming back. I'm interested to see what happens with this situation, but it could either go really well for the Warriors, they trade him and it's done with, or he gets injured and they take a huge hit in cap.
I think that your guys, if you guys are basing your argument on an injury, I feel like your argument's flawed.
I'm not.
Because, I know, Tanner, I know you're not basing it off of an injury. Because you're more so off the middle ground. But hang on. Because the Warriors had a sign and trade after Kevin Durant said he was going to sign with the Nets. So they tried to get something back. It had to be from the Nets. That's why it was D'Angelo Russell. Because they're not going to sign and trade with some other team if Kevin Durant's not signing with that team. And in addition to that, getting somebody back is better than nothing.
I agree.
Even if you work out that sign and trade, then Kevin Durant's gone.
I know you get somebody back, but you also have to pay him. And could that money be better used signing someone else who really isn't as similar as Steph Curry? I guess that's my point. Is that really the best allocation of resources? I definitely agree with you saying that after it's now kind of saying, hey, you will get something, and having it be an all-star, no less, who, with an asterisk, of course, but still an all-star, played in the all-star game is definitely hard to say it's a bad move. It's just really, when you look into it, it does kind of get a little bit fishy.
Yeah, I agree. I think both of y'all brought up some great points.
We argued on something.
Finally.
So switching gears to the Philadelphia 76ers. They re-signed Tobias Harris for a 5-year, $180 million. They lost Jimmy Butler to the Heat for 4 years, which he signed with the Heat for 4 year, $142 million. Gained Josh Richardson, lost J.J. Redick to New Orleans. And obviously they signed Al Horford for a 4-year, $109 million. Is this a smart move by the 76ers? Why and what role do you think he'll play in this organization?
So who are we talking about being a smart move? Josh Richardson?
Al Horford.
Al Horford. Okay. I think that regardless of what Kawhi Leonard does, I think the 76ers are my favorite to win the Eastern Conference this year off of the moves that they've made. Acquiring Al Horford is a big part of that because you have a guy who's going to play the power forward position, who's normally a center, who's going to be able to spread the floor out because he is able to shoot from deep. Then he plays defense on the other end, better than majority, if not all, of big men in the league. Only guys like Rudy Gobert play better defense than Al Horford, who was the defensive player of the year. The thing is, I really think Al Horford, adding him to the 76ers mix, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens because you move Tobias Harris to the small forward position, where previously he was slide at power forward. Is Tobias Harris going to be fast enough and good enough to go up against some of the other small forwards, not only just in the East, but in the NBA in general?
Absolutely.
I think that's my biggest question. Because Al Horford, will he fit in their system? I absolutely think so. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens at that small forward position.
Yeah.
With, now that they don't have Jimmy Butler. They're going to be extremely elite in terms of defense. But whether they're going to be able to keep up on offense when you have essentially 3 big men in the starting lineup, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I really like what the 76ers has done, but it's kind of for a different reason. And obviously re-signing Tobias, you lock down, budding star. I mean, he hasn't quite gotten there yet, but he has, he's played really with a team like the Clippers, who really, didn't really have someone who would take the shots. And then when he's in Philly, he's surrounded by so much other talent. But I really like this Josh Richardson, or they brought in for Jimmy Butler. This kid is 25 years old, averaged 16 plus points a game down in Miami. And however you kind of configure your starting lineup, for me, it almost makes sense to have Richardson start at small forward, Tobias at power forward, Embiid at center, and maybe bring Horford off the bench. So all the roles. But either way, you're having a 16-point scorer coming off the bench, or you're having Al Horford.
Yeah.
One of the, like you said, one of the better defensive big men, someone who's been in the league for so long, knows the game, knows what it takes to win. You have one of those two guys coming off the bench. How can you not love that, And another move, they locked down Ben Simmons. Whether it's an overpay or not, I'm not going to get into that. But
$70 million.
But whether he deserved it or not, I'm not. But it was their guy, and they locked him down. They don't have to worry about that for a while. Like, they did a lot of good things to help the security of where they're going.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with both of y'all. I think a thing fans aren't really maintaining is that they lost in my personal opinion, a huge locker room cancer in Jimmy Butler. And they replaced him with not obviously same talent level, but a dude that I think will fit very well into the system. I mean, imagine this starting lineup: Ben Simmons, Josh Richardson, Tobias, Al Horford, and Joel Embiid. That is, I mean, that's easily I think easily conference semifinals, maybe conference finals. So I think they're doing great things this offseason. Al Horford, I mean, he's a defense monster, so it'll be interesting to see how he does.
Yeah. Last thought
Um,
on the 76ers. I think it would have been crazy to see what would happen if they were able to retain JJ Redick. Because,
yeah,
you slot him at the shooting guard position where he's most natural. You get Josh Richardson over to the small forward position where he's most natural. And then you get your pick between whether you want Tobias coming off the bench or do you want Al Horford coming off the
yeah,
bench. Like, both of those guys, like between Tobias Harris and Al Horford, neither of them are going to make sure that you win the NBA championship, but both of them, as your sixth man,
yeah,
are going to make sure that you're going to be in contention for that.
absolutely. Two great players.
And I was just gonna bring up the loss of JJ Redick. Does it hurt? They'll feel it. They'll feel it. An elite shooter, veteran guy. It really and losing him, like you said, really messes up kind of the roles. Who's playing what? But regardless, I mean, this team got better. They got deeper.
Yeah.
They got better. They got better defensively. They just got better. And
The only flaw I see in this team is 3-point shooting. That's the one flaw I
yep.
see. Other than that, I love it. I love
Yeah.
everything they've done.
Which even speaks back to what we were talking about with retaining JJ Redick.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a big player so far, as we know, in free agency is the Los Angeles Lakers. As you both know, they received Anthony Davis in a trade that sent Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, 3 first-rounders, and one being to DeAndre Hunter, who was traded to the Atlanta Hawks. What are y'all's personal opinions on the trade? Was it a good move by the Lakers?
Was it a good move by the Lakers?
And
Yes.
was it a good move by the Pelicans?
I think this is one where it's a yes to both. Because the Lakers, obviously they have LeBron James getting older, as shown this past year. He can't play 82 games anymore. And you need to do something fast. And yeah, did these guys show promise? Yeah. Was it your young core? Absolutely. But for them to get ready to a point where they can compete for a championship with LeBron James, it would have taken too much time, and they needed someone quicker, and that's what they did. They brought in Anthony Davis. We talk about the depth, which certainly is a huge issue, and not having any depth could keep them from a championship. But LeBron and Anthony Davis isn't, at the very least, them two is a Western Conference Finals, especially with a weakened Golden State, and some of these stars like going over to the East and whatnot, a little more balancing of the power. But and then if you look at the Pelicans, the haul you got back, and you turn those draft picks, you even flip them for even more draft picks. I think what they did was great. Was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not sure if I would go as far as to say it would be an automatic Western Conference Finals appearance, but it's certainly going to be close. It really depends on what happens with Kawhi. Because if Kawhi goes to the Lakers, then you have an unparalleled trio that, like I said, unparalleled. You've never seen, like, whether you think that each of them, like between LeBron, AD, and Kawhi, whether you think that they're all actually top 5 players or not, they're top 5 caliber players. Whether you'd include AD or Kawhi, depending on where you rank them. At the very least, they're all right there. Top 7 at the very least. And so, but with just LeBron and AD, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if they don't get Kawhi, how they fill out that roster. Because right now they pretty much just have 4 people on their roster who's actually worth playing minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's gonna be interesting how they fill out their roster. When they had their young guys, they tried the mentor route, and it blew up in their face quite horribly, signing guys like Rondo and Lance Stevenson and JaVale McGee, and that did not work. So when they start if they don't get Kawhi and they start needing to sign some people, I think it's going to be very interesting how they decide to go, knowing how last decisions did not work at all.
Yeah, they're going to need shooters. They don't need playmakers.
Exactly.
It's last year was evidence enough of that.
Yeah. I'm going to actually disagree with both of y'all. I think the Pelicans personally won the trade, and here's why. I think right now the 4 players I know for sure are on the Lakers. LeBron, okay, yeah, he's pretty good. AD, pretty good. Jared Dudley and Kyle Kuzma. That's 4. They have Lance Stevenson, Rajon Rondo, Alex Caruso. They literally don't have a bench right now other than like Isaac Bonga, who was their 13th man, never dressed last year. And Josh Hart, yes, he's young, has stuff to prove, but good off bench. Lonzo, I think they made a mistake by trading him. I think him and LeBron and AD, because Lonzo, y'all know I'm a huge fan of his, but he's a playmaker, not a scorer. And I think with AD and LeBron, that could have been something special. Brandon Ingram, he could have been mentored by LeBron, and he could have been a stud in the next couple of years. Also with Lonzo, he was on the team, 2 years, faced an injury. They didn't give him I don't think they gave him time to develop. And I think you saw what D'Angelo Russell did when he went to Nets away from the Lakers. I think, obviously, Lonzo's not going to become a D'Angelo Russell caliber player, just scoring 25-plus a night, but I still think they didn't give him time to develop. That being said, you're getting AD, one of the best players in the league. But did they give him too much? I think so, but and they were playing this card of potentially signing a big free agent. And the last ones are DeMarcus Cousins, who's not the same player he was a couple years ago, and the possibility of Kawhi, which they are strong. It's basically between the Raptors and the Lakers. Which one he will decide is soon to be found out. But I don't know. I don't know about this trade. Obviously AD, but is it worth getting rid of your entire young core except Kyle Kuzma? I don't personally believe so.
So here's something that's interesting that I think that needs to be said. I don't think that you can make that trade without including both Lonzo and a combination of either Kuzma or Brandon Ingram. And the reason why is because of Ingram's blood clot issues. We saw that with Chris Bosh. He was a incredibly solid NBA player who was sidelined near near his prime, just because of a random blood clot issue that seriously, that came close to ending his life, by reports of Chris Bosh himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you just recently had something like that, Brandon Ingram is, unfortunately enough, because of those health risks, he just doesn't have the same, the same trade value as he used to.
Yeah.
And with Lonzo, I do think that he's going to have a long NBA career only for his playmaking ability. I don't think he's ever going to develop a decent shot. unless he can stop doing this from the side, start doing this from the up. But he could very well go down as one of the biggest busts at the number 2 position just because he was drafted at the number 2 position. Like he's and with that draft class as well.
Yeah.
But I think that the Lakers gave up an appropriate amount given what we know about all of those players.
You kind of had to.
Like in order to get Anthony Davis,
Yeah.
you have to. I think this is generally with trades, the team that gets the best player wins the deal. But I think this is an interesting trade because depending on where Anthony Davis goes from here, depending on where Alonzo, Ingram, and Josh Hart and the picks sent the way of the Pelicans. The Pelicans are going to be loaded moving forward, and the Lakers just might, depending on where certain things land.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with both of you. I would, if I were the Lakers, I would have loved to hold on to Lonzo. A pass first point guard would have worked great. I think with I don't think anyone would doubt that that it would work great with LeBron and Anthony Davis. But you just had to. You just had to. They needed Lonzo to make the deal happen, and if that is the demand, I think you definitely pay up, as they did.
I think I'm really thrilled to see how this young Pelicans team goes. I mean, they got perhaps what people are calling the next LeBron James. There's no one that's been hyped up as much as Zion Williamson since LeBron, and no one can argue that. And it seems just everything's falling into yes, they lost Anthony Davis, but they got a lot back for a lot of young talent. I think they are definitely on the up.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their starting lineup last year to this year, there's no comparison. I mean, this year they have, it's going to be Alonzo, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and
Drew
Holiday. Drew Holiday. Yeah. So just guys that have tons of upside, tons of promise. It's similar to the Knicks. It's just going to be this waiting game. There's going to be growing pains, but if you're a Pelicans fan, in 1 year, 1 year of a rebuild, 1 year, they're already looking great.
Yeah, absolutely. Switching gears to some other notable free agents, we have Patrick Beverley re-signing with the Clippers for 3 years, $40 million. I don't know if y'all saw that he actually declined the Sacramento Kings offer, and his reasoning was because Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell are his brothers. In y'all's opinion, how valuable of a player is that to a team that views his teammates as family and just a lockdown defender in the NBA?
Mm-hmm. I think the Clippers have built this culture of not only just a brotherhood of a family, but every single player on that roster, I think with the exception of Danilo Gallinari, is a grit and grind player. You have a lot of aggressive guys who are going to lay it out every single night. And to be able to keep a guy like Patrick Beverley, it withholds the culture that the Clippers have worked so hard to establish. Because, if you're not going to be able to resign a guy like Patrick Beverley, your culture starts to fade. And when you're losing that family environment, the idea that, you're going to put everything on the line for the family, when you're trying to get a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who is extremely close to his family and understands those kind of concepts above anything else, because we know he understands family. We don't think he understands the glitz and glamour of the Lakers the way that everyone else does. He just thinks about things differently, except for when it comes to family. So preserving the culture for the Clippers was extremely necessary in order to not only pursue Kawhi, but it was really big just for the future of to be able to have a guy coming off the bench who's going to be able to lock up, if not just pester, anybody, even the great Kevin Durant, as we saw in the first round of the NBA playoffs. With a healthy KD, with a healthy Clay, Boogie Cousins being gone in Game 3, I believe, in that series. They went 6.
Yeah.
I don't think I can stress enough or put into words how important people like that are on a basketball team. The nature of the game is you are face to face. There are huge disparities in height. People who are fearless, who will switch ball screens and guard the center in the paint. Someone who will pick up full court, someone who will talk a little bit of smack, get under people's skin, draw technicals, just get them off their game. So important. People who refer to teammates as brothers and decline other offers to stay with them. Like, I seriously can't put into words how important a player like that is for any team, especially for a team like the Clippers, whose play style is so different from other teams, needing the superstar power, needing the high power offense, where the Clippers just say, come get us. We're here. Let's play some basketball. We'll grind you out. We'll pick up full court. We'll play tough defense. And just let's play a traditional style of basketball. I just can't. I'm going to say it again. I can't put into words how important something like that is.
I agree with both of y'all. I think this is a huge re-sign. I think Patrick Beverley quite possibly is the heart of that Clipper. He's always been like, I'll punch you in the mouth. You better not punch me back, or I'll punch you. We'll get in a tussle. But I'm just going to name off some other notable free agent signings. Malcolm Brogdon to the Indiana Pacers. Chris Middleton stays. Marc Gasol stays. Kristaps re-signed. D. Rose to Detroit. Alonzo Trier picked up his player option. Isaiah Thomas to the Wizards. Hassan Whiteside traded to Portland. Harrison Barnes re-signed. Damian Lillard, contract extension, 4-year, $196 million. Harrison Barnes re-signed. And Boban to the Dallas Mavs. After hearing all of what we talked about, who is winning free agency and what should we expect from the next NBA season?
Do you want to take this?
I can go. I think that the team that surprised me the most, in my opinion, won free agency, won the off season, is a team with a free agent signing that you didn't name. They had a free agent
Don't
signing.
say it.
They also had a trade that they made.
No, don't say it.
The Utah Jazz. Adding Mike Conley at point guard and stealing Bogdanovich from the Pacers is absolutely massive. The Jazz have been looking to have another piece on offense to surround Donovan Mitchell with. Instead of one, they got two. You have Mike Conley, who's an extremely selfless guy. There's an interview that came out really quickly after he got traded on the night of the NBA awards, and he was just talking about how much he's going to miss the guys in in Memphis, but how excited he's going to be to work with guys like Donovan Mitchell. Something that's crazy to know about Mike Conley: never once in his entire career has he picked up a technical foul. He is one of the cleanest guys in the game, but he's also one of the best teammates. He's also pretty good at his job on both ends of the floor. And he got a guy like Bogdanovich. He's stellar from three-point range. He's going to give you a lot on offense that a guy like Joe Ingles couldn't offer you. A guy like Jay Crowder couldn't offer you, playing that small forward position. So moving forward, having a starting lineup composed of Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Bogdanovich, whoever the heck they want to stick at power forward, and Rudy Gobert, I think that's going to be a team that's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the West.
Yeah, I knew I shouldn't have passed that one off. I had the Jazz in mind. I really love what they're doing for everything you just said. Easy answer, of course, is the Brooklyn Nets. But another team that I really like what they're doing is the Portland Trailblazers. And you did.
Speaking of those two teams,
You mentioned the Hassan Whiteside trade, which is really big for a team whose big man's future is uncertain with an incredibly serious leg injury. They locked down Damian Lillard for an insane amount of money, which, I mean, he wants to be there. They want him there. He's a superstar point guard, shown on numerous occasions. They retained a bunch of talent. I mean, they were in the Western Conference Finals last year against, without their center. And now that they bring in Whiteside, who there are some question marks around his game, whether or not he always plays as hard as he can. But in this upcoming season, with the weakened Warriors, with the lack of depth in the Lakers, I'm really liking what Portland puts out. I really like their chances in the West.
Absolutely. Who is winning free agency? It's a great question.
I wonder who came up with that great question.
I can
Sam,
tell you, know? Not. The New York Knicks. They're doing stuff right. They're in full rebuild. No one can argue that. But if I had to pick a team that's winning, that's not the Utah Jazz or the Portland Trailblazers, I'm going to say probably the Dallas Mavericks. They kept Kristaps Porzingis, which is huge, matched up with Luka Doncic. And then they picked up Boban, who's just an animal. So it'll be interesting to see how the Mavs do. Also, I want to bring up the fact that the Kings, I believe, Harrison Barnes re-signed with the Kings. They are on the up and up as well. Unfortunately, they did lose Willie Cauley-Stein to the Warriors. But I think they're a team to watch, and I think what we should expect for the next NBA season is a more even playing field. I think both East and West are deep and extremely talented. It's going to be the Warriors in the finals. I think there's a lot of talent in the West, a lot of talent in the East. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, the only way that the parity could be destroyed is if Kawhi went to the Lakers, and not even for selfish reasons, wanting him to go to the Clippers, but just as a basketball fan, not going to the Lakers for Kawhi would open up parity that the NBA hasn't seen in an incredibly
yeah.
Because even if you track back in the past, there's always been the favorites. And right now, if Kawhi re-signs or he signs with the Clippers, one way or another, you don't have a single favorite like you have in the past.
Right, and we got three different favorite teams. None of us said we wanted Kawhi Leonard to go to the Lakers, and to the parity you mentioned. Just earlier in the show, I was talking about how LeBron and AD is an automatic Western Conference Finals. You said you weren't sure. Sam's talking about how the Pelicans may have even won the trade. Like, there's just so many moves and so much, like you said, just parity all throughout the league.
Mm-hmm. I'm so looking forward to this NBA season because I don't know what's going to happen. Like, you can have your
up in the air right now.
Exactly, because you can have your favorites who you think's going to win, but just look at the East, for an instance, this last year. The number 1 seed didn't win.
Yeah.
And then in the West, of course, you had the Warriors. But who thought that the Trailblazers were going to be facing them in the conference finals?
Yeah.
But so it's going to be crazy to see what happens.
All right, guys, that's all I have. Do y'all have any closing statements about anything we've talked about tonight?
I do have some closing statements. And we are going to bring it full circle to the New York Knicks, who obviously missed out. But you talk about the moves they had made, signing Julius Randle, signing Bobby Portis, Taj Gibson, Elfrid Payton. On the surface, they might seem confusing, But when you look at it, they have 4 guys who they think are going to be pieces, long-term pieces. That being Dennis Smith, that being R.J. Barrett, Kevin Knox, and Mitchell Robinson. You add a 24-year-old power forward who averaged 20-plus points per game and is clearly on his way up. You add another 24-year-old power forward who averaged 20-plus points per game. And then you add these veteran guys around him who can serve as backups and won't be upset with their playing time being cut at the hands of these younger guys who are all signed to 2-year contracts with a team option after the first year. With the 2021 class coming up, where hopefully they'll have some more developed guys, more proven pieces, and a more attractive thing to sell to free agents. It isn't KD, it isn't Kyrie, but it could just be me being an optimist, but I am really liking what the Knicks are doing.
I think that missing out on Kyrie leading to missing out on KD wasn't really missing out at all for the Knicks because they need time. Time hasn't been very good to them in the past, but generally speaking, the basketball gods tend to repay people for the work they do. The Knicks, by tanking, aren't going to be rewarded for what they did. Yep, they dropped to the 3 spot, and then they didn't get the free agents they wanted. But if they play the game the right way and just take their time and try not to cheat the system, I think these things are going to go well for them. And hopefully so. I don't want to have to see guys like Stephen A. Smith, grown men, crying on TV anymore. At least not about basketball anyways.
Saying it's the worst day in Knicks history is an absolute joke. I mean, you missed out on giving, for the reasons I had said before, basically having 2 years of relevancy with Kevin Durant, having this massive contract, entering free agency with that contract on the books, having to pay your younger guys. It would have just been a disaster. So that sentence is absolutely a joke to me.
Keegan, your closing statement?
I don't have anything in particular that I want to talk about in terms of my team because everything you need to know about my team will be coming tomorrow. As the hours are winding down of today, it's looking like Kawhi Leonard's decision will be pushed back yet to July 4th. And what better day than July 4th to announce where you want to go? Everybody's not going to be mostly everybody won't be at work. They'll be at home, spending time with your families, cooking out, grilling. So what better time than that than with family than for a guy who's so centered on family to announce what he wants to do.
Absolutely.
And for a Clippers fan, I'm just waiting to see what happens. If Kawhi ends up going to the Clippers, I'm great. We instantly become a championship contender. If not, then we're just going to keep running the course. We're going to play the grit and grind game and just play entertaining basketball. Because, this past year, despite only being an 8 seed, it was one of the most enjoyable seasons I've had as a Clippers fan. Because generally speaking, people stayed healthy. They didn't die in the playoffs like Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Jordan consistently did with Lob City. More generally, when we're talking about the NBA as a whole, with the moves that the Jazz have made, the moves that the Lakers have made, the Trailblazers, 3 teams we've talked about a bit about on this podcast. The West is going to be incredibly interesting moving forward, as well as the moves that the Warriors have made, seeing what happens when Klay Thompson comes back, see who they get for D'Angelo Russell when they want to trade him. Who knows what will happen? Same goes for the East. The 76ers made some great moves, making their defense a whole lot stronger, losing a little bit on offense, but leaving and pushing out a locker room cancer, as Sam said. With the Boston Celtics adding Kemba Walker, it's going to be extremely interesting to happens when you have a culture change. You lose Kyrie, who's a ball dominant guy. You get Kemba Walker, who's one of the best teammates out there in basketball. Who knows what's going to happen with Giannis Antetokounmpo, Who knows what's going to happen with Joel Embiid? Both of them have fires lit under them for different reasons. We all saw Giannis broke down at how he broke down at the NBA awards when he was accepting his MVP award. I have no doubt in my mind that at some point Giannis is going to be a champion. It just depends on what happens. If he develops a jump shot, that's a scary man. He's scary as is. He is a terrifying beast of a human. But there's so many ways that this NBA season will develop. Let's just hope that we are able to keep face, stay with parity. Kawhi Leonard, don't go to the Lakers.
As for my closing statement, if you haven't been watching the NBA in the past couple years, I beg you to tune in to this upcoming year. So many things have changed. It's not all about the Warriors. Who can beat the Warriors? There's an even playing field finally. Back to the good old days of the NBA, not a dominant team. If you haven't been watching, I beg you, please watch the NBA. Anything else y'all need to add?
I don't think so. This has been a whole lot of fun.
I don't think so.
I haven't talked to you guys directly in a little while, so it's been nice to see your faces again and just chat up. And looking forward to see you guys come fall. And I'm ready to see where Kawhi goes.
Exactly.
All right,
All I say is go Knicks, baby. Woo!
All right, that'll be all for the first show of the Sports Talkeyes show. Thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from back y'all soon.